All right, everybody. Welcome to Tridium Talk. We've got a exciting agenda prepared for you today. And before we get started, just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. No matter where you find yourself in the world, we understand that your time is valuable, and we appreciate you reserving time on your schedule to join us as we discuss some exciting new things coming with Niagara 4.14. So let's get started. So we're here to discuss some of the new HTML5 web views we have available in Niagara 4.14. And so as we get through this presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A chat bubble there to ask your question, and we will do our best to address each of them live at the end of this presentation. And if there are any questions that we were unable to answer during the session, we will ensure to address them offline. And additionally, we will post the Q&A alongside the Tridium Talk, or actual recording of the Tridium Talk on tridium.com. So if you go to the events tab, you can see Tridium Talks there, and those are going to be continued to be uploaded there and for your offline viewing. So let's get started. Just taking a quick look at what the agenda is for today. So we're going to dig into where we are from a Niagara release perspective, and then, of course, what's coming in 4.14, and then we'll discuss some resources that we believe will be extremely valuable for you in the days ahead. So, as always, we continue to evolve the Niagara framework, and we're going to continue to derive value in accordance with our product dimensions. Those are interoperability, visualization, connectivity and cloud, certification and compliance, deployment ease, flexibility, and of course, at the end of the day, the most important thing, cyber defense. We're going to continue to derive value in the product in accordance with these product dimensions. Of course, this all aligns with the things you do on a day-to-day. So that's our commitment to you and the community to ensure that we are providing the right value, the right capabilities in the product. So let's take a quick view as to where we are today. We do have Niagara 4.10 that is available. I'm not going to spend too much time digging into these releases, or these features rather, because you've got all this information at your disposal. It's been out since March of 2021. So just to give you a little bit of an insight into what you can expect. So we do have another update build coming here in about 2 weeks, folks. So that's a 410 U8 coming on the 24th of May. And then we're going to follow up with a U9 or version U9 rather in Q3. And then 410 will be officially end of life with the release of Niagara 4.15, which we are anticipating will happen at about the turn of the year. So going into January of 2025 is when we're expecting to release Niagara 4.15, and that will be the new long-term support release. So there's been plenty of runway out in the market there for 410, and we're going to continue to provide a couple more updates until it's officially end of life. Now, of course, we do have 4.13 available. That's our non-LTS version, and there's plenty to discuss here. I think one thing for you all to be aware of is that, hey, we've got another release of 4.13 that is coming soon. So this is just going to give you a quick snapshot into the build cadence. We do have a 4.13 U3 coming on the 24th of May. So you're getting two releases on May 24th. So you can double the value there. You're getting a 410 U8 plus a 413 U3. So make sure you prepare for that. And then as soon as we get 414 out the door, which is at the end of the day, what we're here talking about, 413 will be officially unsupported. So make sure that you're aware of that. You have that all incorporated into your build schedule, and so that you can make our end customers aware of this change as well. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about it's because we do have the Niagara Cloud Suite that's available. We have a 90-day free trial of Promote and Recover that we'll briefly talk about here at the end of the presentation. But the reason why this is so important, particularly to this Tridium talk, is that we're talking about UX views, or these HTML5 views that you can now use in the browser. Now, with Niagara Remote in particular, remember that's going to provide you web-based remote access to a Niagara station from anywhere. So as you think about some of the new views that we will be reviewing today, you're going to be able to use these alongside Niagara Remote as soon as 4.14 gets released. And then again, when 4.15 gets released and you get some more UX views therein, that's only going to increase the value and really just the range of capabilities that you can leverage today using Niagara Remote and Niagara 4.14. And just to remind you, as I mentioned, we do have that 90-day trial of Remote Recover that you can add to any Niagara supervisor or Jace license that you want. We've been running that since February 1st, and we're going to keep it going. So keep that in mind. And again, if you have any questions about that, visit our website. And again, we'll review that briefly here at the end. But of course, we're talking about, hey, where are we heading tomorrow? What's going on with Niagara 4.14? So if you attended our last Tridium Talk, we reviewed the summit as well as digging into some 4.14 features. So in accordance with our product dimensions, deployment, visualization, connectivity, security, certification, and compliance, we're going to continue to drive value in each of these dimensions. So here's a general highlight of what you can expect in Niagara 4.14. Now, if you were unaware of this, we are currently in beta testing for 4.14. So if you are interested in giving this a test drive, let us know. Reach out to Tridium Beta Test at Tridium.com to join our early access and beta testing program. Of course, we appreciate your support, participation in advance, but there's plenty here for you to take advantage of. Now, we will follow up this Tridium Talk with at least 2 more Tridium Talks that will be covering some of the important features within Niagara 4.14. Now, more specifically, we are going to have a Tridium Talk on the certificate signing service, which is the first feature shown up there under the deployment dimension. Now, that one is a huge game changer. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that because, again, I really want to use the next Tridium Talk as an opportunity to really dig into that. And then following the certificate signing service, we will have a Tridium Talk on our implementation of Brick within Niagara 4.14. So plenty of things to come here from a Tridium Talk perspective. Make sure you're paying attention to any of the emails that we do send out to you, just notifying you in advance about these talks. And of course, if you can't attend, that's why we post it on YouTube as well as on Tridium.com so that you can view them whenever you want. But look at all those features. Look at all those new views under the visualization dimension. That is considerable. And we're going to take a little bit of time digging into each and every one of those today just to let you know what they look like in 4.14. And then perhaps we'll even dig into, what it even does, because there's a few there on that list that you may or may not be aware of, or at least one in particular that I'm thinking about. But the one thing we really want to highlight here is this is a commitment that we made to the community to take those Workbench application engineering interfaces, migrate them to the browser to be able to extend your workflow into a different environment, but then also to empower new services or new cloud capabilities such as Niagara Remote. All right, so let's jump right in. So as I mentioned, these new web views are a significant advancement from a deployment standpoint, as well as just the general visualization or that user experience that you're able to enjoy when you're interacting with the product. And of course, at the heart of it all, we have secure connectivity that is just baked in by default. When we mean secure by default, that's something that we do not take lightly. It does require us to be in a different disposition from a security standpoint, but that's our commitment to you. So new HTML5 views. Well, why did we do those in the first place? I mentioned, it's going to provide a number of enhancements that you weren't able to enjoy prior to 4.14. And we've been making this migration towards getting these views into the browser such that you don't always need the thick client, right? You don't need Workbench with you every single time you are doing any work within a Niagara station. Another one of the benefits from this is because it's extending that Niagara framework that you know and love. It doesn't matter what brand that you're interacting with, whether it be a Vicon, a Honeywell, a Distech, a JCI, a Siemens, a Schneider, it doesn't matter. You're going to be able to take advantage of these views and without having to do anything. And of course, it's still really hammering in on that accessibility and that openness that you know and love and are able to take advantage of within the Niagara framework today. So there's plenty of them, and we're going to dig in. So the driver manager web view. So what we have here in particular, of course, is if you think about digging into a Niagara station, and you have clicked on the driver's container, for example, you're going to see that whole driver manager. And through that interface, you can add a number of drivers, like what I'm showing there in that screenshot on the right. So let's show what it looks like in the browser. So what I've done here is just create a nice little PX page, and I'm just going to jump right into the driver manager. So you're seeing, got a couple in fault there. I think you know why there if you take a look at the fault cause. But through this interface, folks, you can add anything. You can add an American Automatrix driver. You can add an Andover driver, Access Video, BACnet, Kara Comfort Network, Edge IO, File Network, just to name a few. The list goes on, folks. But these are all the new, again, these new manager interfaces that you can take advantage of within the browser itself. And so what you think about these capabilities, remember, you do now have the opportunity, as long as a customer has a workstation that's sitting on the network that can actually pull up or access those, whether it be a J supervisor portability device, just got to hit the IP address of that station, and you can start taking advantage of those views. So from a Niagara network standpoint, I think if you're paying attention to the previous releases, we have implemented support for the point manager, the device manager, but there were a couple things that were still kind of hanging out there that we needed to complete. And now we have the ability to import histories, schedules, all through the Niagara network. So you do have those capabilities. And when you think about just getting the full experience from a Niagara standpoint, I mean, that's going to get it to you. So, for example, if I wanted to discover stations, of course, I can do that here. And on top of that, remember, you have the link to the certificate manager. That's a new feature for 4.13. Again, if you haven't had the opportunity to take a look at, hey, what does this look like in a browser? Well, 4.14 is going to be a perfect opportunity for you to do that as well. So as I mentioned, right, we've got a number of things that we did. We had the point manager that's available, but remember, we have the schedules as well. So if I wanted to do any type of schedules discovery, again, I could do this all now through the browser, which is going to save you a considerable amount of time. How about histories? That's an important thing. Even doing history discovery as well, it's something that you can now accomplish through the browser. And of course, if they're showing us as light gray, that means they're already been imported into that station. But here's one in particular that I have not brought in. And again, it's just as easy as a drag and drop, or you can use this add button if you need. But remember, you can drag and drop between windows, which of course is going to give you that utility that you are certainly looking for. All right, so let's get back into TridiumTalk here. So RDBMS network, why would you use this? So the RDBMS network, if you haven't got a chance to use it, it is utilized primarily to export histories and alarms to a relational database. Now the whole point of that is, well, problem being solved essentially is that if you keep them locally, you're essentially going to grow the size of your local alarm and history databases. Now, if you've had the Niagara framework installed for years and years, what you will quickly find is that you've got millions of records that are just housed within those local alarm or history databases. Now, what happens over time, though, is that as that database grows and you do a station restart from time to time, when that station restarts, it's got to index every single one of those records. And so best practice, of course, is to export those alarms and histories to relational database, not only for their safekeeping, but for their instantaneous retrieval if you are using WebChart, for example, within the product. But just similar to that same old, you can now start actually, oh, look at this. I got a couple SQL databases that are down. Oh, looks like, oh yeah, didn't install the connector, which is something that frequently happens when you upgrade, as I did here, from a 4.13 to a 4.14. There's going to be certain extenders, for example, or certain modules that you're going to have to share are in place within that 4.14 directory. And one of them that I missed was that MySQL connector, that jar. And so in order for that to actually work, that's the only way that I could do that. But just to let you know, again, it's the histories view. These are all showing as idle because, again, I failed to install that connector. But nevertheless, you do have that capability to leverage this interface now within Niagara 4.14. All right, so standard building protocol web views. So I'm just going to cover a couple of these just to let you all know. We've got the BACnet network, we've got the LAN network, we've got the Modbus network, and the BACnet network in particular. We have had the points manager available within the browser for some time, but of course, rounding out that total picture to give you the ability to access the export table and a number of other capabilities within the BACnet network. We just extended that today within 4.14. And then also LAN works, we understand that's kind of what we would call a more of a legacy-based protocol. And we understand that I think over time, we're going to see most of those buildings out there with LAN installed. They'll either be retrofitted with like a T1L connection, or perhaps they'll be replaced with BACnet. But nevertheless, it still is a protocol that's out there in the market, and that's why we invested the time to be able to provide the capability to manage LAN network through the browser. So there's plenty of network management tools and capabilities that we ported into 4.14. And then of course you have the Modbus network as well. So let's dig right into that. Let's look at the Modbus network first. So of course, if I'm going to add a Modbus network, I can say I'm going to go ahead and add my Modbus async device. Because I do not have this connected at the moment, I would naturally want to set up my address, which of course is going to be pre-configured. But once I add this, of course, it's going to be down for good reason, because it doesn't exist, amongst other things. But as you know, with Modbus, those you actually have to add the points, so there's no essential discovery of those. And so through that, you would want to, for example, that's when you'd start adding your Modbus points accordingly. But again, you could build that all in. Of course, this is going to fail at the moment, just given the fact of the starting address that I defined therein. But again, you have that capability to be able to do full, complete end-to-end management setup of a Modbus network. All right, so let's dig into the LAN side here, because there are plenty of LAN interfaces that we have available. So of course, you've got your LAN device manager. That's what you know and love. It's one thing I think that's been around for quite some time. You do have your points manager. So of course, as you saw, I do not have a LAN device connected here at the time, so I shouldn't see anything, but I only will see the NVI request and NVO status that come by default with that local LAN device that I already have set up. Now, as you all well know, if you're using like a LAN over IP system, for example, your LAN routers are going to be one in particular that you're going to encounter. So of course I can add a LAN router here. Of course, I would need to address this accordingly, which I'm not going to spend time doing here. And it will, of course, if I did any level of pinging, it would go in default. But this is the interface, of course, that you would, if you had them on the network, you would just invoke the discovery and they would show up in the discovery pane. And of course, adding it to the database would just be the same thing, drag and drop down into the lower pane here. But then even more though, remember that old link manager. So if you're going to be using Niagara as an LNS, which you can do, you're going to actually have to make your bindings or establish your bindings actually through this interface. And so whether they're reliable, critical, of course, you will set those things up accordingly. But more often than not, you're not going to be using Niagara as the LNS tool. And so when you're discovering points and things like that, you most likely are not going to be using that. But if you do, you end up doing that, you actually will be using that. Because remember, when you're discovering a LAN device that's already been configured through an LNS tool, you're going to want to use them. You're not going to want to commission it, because if you commission it, then you're essentially going to be breaking those binds. You're going to just want to do what would be a replace, essentially, and it'll ensure that those bonds, those link, stay in place, and you are not binding them using Niagara. Of course, there's the utilities manager as well, and that's going to give you kind of essential device level detail about what's connected on the LAN network. So plenty there in store there for the LAN network in particular. And then, of course, BACnet. Be remiss if I didn't show that one. So let's stick right into BACnet. Where are you? You're right here. Perfect. So with BACnet, of course, it's the same deal. If I wanted to add a new BACnet device, I could do it. Of course, I should be addressing it appropriately, which I'm not going to at the moment because, well, I do not have one connected. But of course, you have the full range of capabilities here through this interface. But let's actually dig into this one BACnet device just to show you. Of course, I do have the points, convoke discovery, but of course it's going to fail because it's not an actual device itself and it is down. But remember, we had more than just that. We also have, you have your schedules that you can use. And then, of course, we've got more than just that as well. You've got the export table that you can leverage as well. So plenty from that perspective as well. But when you, if you remember me digging into the first driver manager view, we've got more than just that, right? So I've just wanted to take a little time just to show you, of course, the Modbus BACnet LAN, but folks, remember there's more than just that. So no matter what you've got there, even if it's OBIX, OPC UA, SNMP, again, you have the capability to add those all there on the fly. All right, so NRAO network view. So why would I use this? Well, of course, if you have a Jace today, and let's say that you've got IO connected to it, you would be using our NRAO or remote IO, and we offer that today. We had two options. We have the IOR34 and the IOR16, and you can now configure those devices, and of course, any of the sensors or relays that are configured therein, all using the browser. So I'm going to get back to the page here, and then I'll go back to the NRIO network. So of course, how I would do that, I could add my 16 or I could add my 34. Of course, I would want to provide an address for those accordingly. Say I want to add my 16. Of course, it's going to be in default because, well, I'm using the supervisor here. But there's a couple things you can do. You have the upgrade firmware option there. And then let's say that, I wanted to actually get into that. And then, of course, you've got the full range of capabilities insofar as on how you configure the inputs as well as the outputs. All right. So the on-call service, web view. So these are come up those, I wouldn't call them more kind of esoteric, but these are there's one service in particular that may or may not be used today by yourself. But just in the interest of kind of knocking the dust off some perhaps underutilized services, the on-call service is intended to be kind of part of the alarm service. And what it's going to do is it'll initiate an email or like a text message for any designated alarms. And what it'll do is it'll send that alarm notification sequentially or kind of as you've configured it within the service. And as alarms escalate, of course, it's going to send to specific users based on the assigned priority that you establish. And so really what it's just enabling you to do is set up a flexible user contact list and schedule that's going to follow the standard schedule interface as well. And so just to dig it into the on-call service, let's see what it looks like. All right, and so what you're seeing here, I just created my first list, but let's say I'm going to add another one. And I'm going to call this get her done. All right, so within this, I can say I'm going to add an on-call contact. Great. And that priority, I'm going to go ahead and set them as that. And I know that, Jerry Terry needs to be using that, or better yet, Gomer Pyle needs to be aware of that. And so, but I've only set up an email recipient at the moment, but of course I could set up one as a text if I deemed that was appropriate. But of course I've got Gomer set up now. Of course I could set up another one, say, I'm going to go and Jerry Terry needs it as well. So let's give it to Jerry Terry. But I'm going to give Jerry Terry a priority too. So again, that's setting up that priority queue for the escalation of those alarms accordingly. So if you haven't used the on-call service, it is an extremely useful service. Again, intended to be utilized alongside the alarm service for the whole purposes of ensuring that alarms, number one, get acknowledged. And I can tell you one thing today, folks, remember, alarms are meant to be acknowledged. If you have an operator out there that's just leaving those alarms unacknowledged, make sure you tell them to acknowledge those because they're intended to be a call to action. And I know that sometimes you're just getting into the workflow a little bit with those operators, but it'll actually improve the overall operation of the alarm database, the alarm service itself, if you are acknowledging and clearing those alarms accordingly. All right, the weather service web view. Boy, if you have been looking at the Niagara community forum, one thing that's going to be clear is that people have been asking for this. They want the web service, or excuse me, the weather service available as a web view. Now, this one thing is particular to the US market. Now, the reason why is because we've leveraged some APIs that have been extended by the National Weather Service and what that does is it basically they have weather stations that are all installed at pretty much all of the major airports throughout the country. And those weather stations are basically serving up this data that the National Weather Service makes available through an API. And of course, we're leveraging that. And so the perfect thing about this is that if you're using optimized start stop, for example, you need to have an indication of what the forecast is going to be. You need to know what the temperature will be tomorrow, such that because that's such a critical input into that overarching optimized start stop algorithm. And so this is a fantastic thing to use for that use case. But now in addition to that, right, I mean, you'd also want to use this for your actual perhaps weather or your graphical user interfaces. So I'm just going to show you here as a quick weather report. This is from, if we click on it, oh, that's from Richmond International Airport. Of course, that's where Tridium is headquartered. And of course, you can select whether you want the air quality alerts or not. Now, if I wanted to add some new ones, I could do that. We do have the Wonderground weather provider as well, but let's say that, hey, you know what? I want to check out what's going on in Abingdon. So of course, that's just going to be state by state. And these are all weather stations that have been installed at all the airports. And so of course, if you want more local reporting, granular reporting, you have the capability to do that as well. Now within the weather report itself, if you kind of dig into it, you've got the current weather view, you've got the current air quality view. And then of course, if I wanted to dig in and say, well, okay, I know what today is going to be like, but what about tomorrow? What's that going to look like? Of course, we've got this icon and the graphical indication that lets you know that that's coming. So what about if I want to embed this on like a graphic, for example? Well, perfect. Here's a great example of it. So here's that same weather service icon that's available now in the browser. So in addition to you being able to configure, add weather stations and things like this, if you've been using the weather widget, you notice that this is something that doesn't render in HTML5, well, you'll be pleased to know that it does today. So that's something that you're going to start taking advantage of in Niagara 4.14. Now, this one's a big one because the category service is one of the most probably frequently utilized services. And the whole point behind that is you are configuring, managing authorization to station components by category. And as you're seeing there in that blurb, we take security seriously. It's kind of at the heart of what we do. And one thing that this does reinforce is, of course, that principle of least privilege, whereby you are only granting access to users that absolutely need it based on the role that they serve. And so we'll take a quick look to see what that looks like today in Niagara 4.14. And so you're seeing this right now. You're seeing all the breakdown. You've got the config, you've got files, histories. And then, of course, with all of these, I can set these permissions all in accordance with the roles that I have set up. So of course, if you don't know about the role service, that is something that is going to be available, intended to be utilized alongside the category browser. So make sure you get a chance to use that. All right, we're going to move on and we're going to get into provisioning because that's one of the most useful, if not most efficient, capabilities and features of the Niagara framework. And the whole point of it is automating your workflow at scale. So you've got the job builder, and that snapshot is just giving you kind of an indication of all of the job steps that you have at your disposal now with Niagara 4.14. And the whole point of it is I'm taking a task that would have otherwise taken me multiple clicks. And let's say when you're doing it at scale across multiple stations, just multiply that time because it will just add up. And so provisioning's been around since the early days of the Niagara framework. And the reason why is because they acknowledge the need to be able to make a massive number of changes across a number of Niagara stations all on the fly. And of course, it's all intended to be utilized from the supervisor. So when you act as supervisor, any other subordinate stations that are connected to that supervisor, you'll be able to configure properties, do multiple capabilities actually, all within a Niagara network provision or Niagara provisioning rather. So what does that look like? Let's get back. Let's take a look. So I can create any number of job steps here. You just saw the list. It is quite exhaustive. So if I wanted to add stations to some of the subordinate stations that I have connected, I would simply do this. A backup station command, that one's pretty simple there. Or let's say that I have a particular file on my supervisor that I need to get out to my JSONs. Let's say for whatever reason, I've got an updated floor plan and I got it in the supervisor, but I want to have them locally at the JSONs for whatever reason. Let's say that, the operator has an HMI that's sitting in the panel in the mechanic room and they love just using that. Might be a reason for you to get that actual image file down to that actual JSON that you could host that locally in the event that you lose connection. Of course, certificate management is one of the most useful things for provisioning. And I talked about the certificate signing service. Of course, that's something that has significant utility, but you can do some things, of course, with provisioning that helps you with the management of certificates in general. Installing application templates, even if you're getting ready to do a massive upgrade across multiple JSONs and you want to install a clean dist across those or clean distribution file, you can do that. Installing software, even invoking boots, removing platform users, setting platform users, actually renaming device station. I know that's something that you may or may not have run into a couple times. And if you have, you quickly found that, hey, this is can sometimes bring about some unintended consequences. But when you're doing that, of course, you should be using provisioning to do that. Upgrading software, man, that's a big one. Upgrading out-of-date software. This is a major time saver. And then even updating licenses. Again, that's one of those really important items that you're going to have to do on the day-to-day. Setting up reciprocal connection is another one of those. Or let's say you need to update connections using the Niagara Network Discovery. Again, that's one of these very important things there that I could do. So if I want to do that or do the check all again, and then running the job, which is be running it, and then you get your job notification accordingly. All right. So another one that I just wanted to talk about that is now available in 4.14 is because we have implemented multi-tiered system database within 4.13, we felt like, hey, we need to provide the capability for actually the security dashboard to be able to roll up some of the stations that are all connected through multi-tiered system database to the primary supervisor's security dashboard. So the whole point of that is being able to see all of those reachable stations that through the Niagara network and be able to quickly assess the security posture of those devices at scale. And then of course at any layout. So that's another one of those views in particular that have been available within HTML5 since Niagara 4.6, but we have been augmenting it with every single release. If we're not adding a new card that's giving you the disposition on a certain network, again, we're going to continue to add value even for things like this when we continue to improve the product. So that's just giving you a quick overview of some of those views that you have available. I didn't get a chance to cover all of them because, folks, you would be here with me. And if you're on the East Coast, I'd be taking your lunchtime essentially because it would take that long just to get through them. But if you want to try them out, that's why we have beta, folks. So reach out to Tridium Beta Test at tridium.com if you are interested in giving these a test drive. In addition to that, let's say you don't know about the on-call service. You're like, hey, you reviewed that. You said that this should be used as the alarm service. Tell me more. Well, folks, we created the Resource Center to enable you to quickly find the information when you need it. We don't want you to have to be spinning your wheels, digging through help documentation, asking your friend or your colleague down the street. Just log into the Resource Center, get to know how, when you need it, and how you need it, more importantly. We've got new case studies that we have been uploading to Tridium.com. Make sure you take a look at them because there are a number of them that we have available. And I think I made this call to action during the previous Tridium talk, but we're going to keep it going. If you have a install out there, wherever you find yourself in the world, and you are proud about this, give us a shout. We would love to highlight it in a case study. these are things that I think not only help just our industry and kind of understanding really the capabilities that they can provide by installing the Niagara framework, it's also an opportunity to highlight all the good work that you do. You are our ambassadors. You are really making our brand better every single day by virtue of the value you create. And we thank you for your business. So if you want to find those use case or those case studies rather, you can log into or log on to Tridium.com and take a look at the library, and you can find those when you need them. Now, I mentioned this before, but you think about all of these views we built in 4.14, envision using those with Niagara Remote, because again, it's just going to enhance your capability to service your customers from anywhere. Now, on top of that, just as a reminder, if you have any legacy JASes, 2, 3, 6s, even the 545s, it doesn't matter. If you have a legacy JASE running today and a customer or an end customer is interested in getting that upgraded, we do have our customer loyalty program that is still running through June 30th of this year. You can get 25% off the core Niagara software license plus a 5-year SMA for the price of an 18-month initial coverage. And all you have to do is just basically buy a new piece of hardware and you get all of that. So as part of that trade-in program, of course, you're going to have to give the host ID of that older JASE as part of that trade-in program, of course, committing to properly destroying it and not reselling it on eBay. So that's just all you need to do, or that's all you need to know in order to take advantage of that program. And so there are plenty of great options at your disposal, and we're hoping that you're able to take advantage of them. All right, so let's get into the Q&A. Let's see what we got there in the chat. All right. Here's a good question from Philip. Philip would like to know, do we have any plans to expand the weather service to natively support locations outside of the US? And that is a great question, Philip. So, one thing that you could do about or to be able to overcome this in the meantime is we do have a HTTP client driver that you can utilize to be able to pull in. Let's say that you do have a weather station in your region, for example, of Ontario, and if they are publishing an API that you can actually pull in that data, you can do that today with the Niagara framework. So one thing that we would need in order to natively support it would just be to kind of get some more feedback from you all. If this is something that is needed across the globe, we can definitely create a list of those particular weather stations that we need to support. And of course, we'll look at the APIs. We'll assess whether they're available, whether they're robust enough to be able to support the number of times that we'll be calling it using the weather service. But yeah, that's something we can look into, Philip. I appreciate you asking that. We'll see what it'll take to provide. All right. Chris Larry would like to know, is BACnet Secure Connect? Can I configure a BACnet Secure Connect network in the browser? Yes, you can, Chris Larry. Yes, you can. So again, you've got that full capability of managing a BACnet network now within the browser. All right. I believe Robert is asking about, will this functionality be allowed through the new SEC modules? Now with the new SEC modules, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, the new security modules. If you're talking about the R2Rs or the remote IOs that we have today within the product that are exclusive or particular to our enterprise security offering, we do not have those views available within HTML5 today. So if you're asking about enterprise security, we have not created HTML5 equivalents for those yet. So if that's what you are addressing there. And if that is not the case, just feel free to pause your question there one more time just to get a little bit more specific. So Paul is asking the same question. Hey, we need it in Canada as well. So we're hearing that loud and clear. And we appreciate your sponsorship, Paul. We'll look into see what that will take to deliver that. All right, so we have an anonymous question, which is a good one. So if you have uncovered, you've used the weather service and you found that, hey, the weather service is down for whatever reason. And so what will happen during those particular conditions is that sometimes you'll actually just see a question mark. So if you think of that weather icon that I was showing before in the presentation, instead of seeing, the actual forecast elements, whether it be in Fahrenheit or Celsius, you will see just a question mark. And so our anonymous attendee was wondering whether we would prevent the question mark from displaying. So we do not have any current plans to do that. I guess anonymous attendee, if you can reply if you can reply to this question, do you just want it to show the last known information? Is that all you're seeking to see? Because I mean, remember one of the whole points of our status flags or status coloring is to give an indication that, hey, something's not right. And so the question mark was kind of intended to fulfill that use case. But if there's something that you would like to see outside of that, then that's definitely something we can look into. So let us know there, anonymous attendee, when you get a chance. All right. There are plans to be possible to update. Yes. So N5, in case you were wondering, we are working on Niagara 5. So what we're doing from a Niagara 5 standpoint at the moment is just we're doing the kind of necessary work to get from Java 8 to Java 21. And so it is merely plumbing work is how you can kind of view it. And so as we make that shift, which again, we're not talking about having Niagara 5 in the beta until probably Q4 of next year. So we've got some runway. But if you've been paying attention to LinkedIn or the socials, you've quickly found out that we have a user group that we set up. And so if you haven't signed up to be a part of that, please do. We're going to use that to solicit your feedback throughout the development process, as well as to give you opportunities to start testing it as soon as available. One thing that's going to be required so that I can address this question is that if you want to upgrade from a Niagara 4 to a Niagara 5 station, you're going to have an active SMA. So keep that in mind. There's plenty of value from an SMA perspective just because it's going to require that. Great question from anonymous attendee. Any plans for a Workbench dark mode? Yes, we do have plans for that. And then the second question is, any plans to make graphics editable in the browser? Yes, that is coming. So yes, you'll be delighted to know. So yeah, that's Kazem. We will be making those graphic views editable in the browser. All right, we've got another actual request for the weather service in the EU. So we will take a look at that. So Salius, we appreciate that. All right. Yes, Mark would like to know if the JACE 8000 is going to run Niagara 5. It will not. So keep that in mind, folks. The JACE 8000 will not run Niagara 5. All right. All right. So Rafal said he would like some web view functionalities replicating what's available. Yes, it is. All right. Yeah. And so here's the one thing so Rafal's bringing up a good point. He said, hey, I've noticed that you've added certain things in the browser, capabilities within the browser views in particular that you haven't extended to Workbench. The whole point behind that is so that you have added utility by using the browser. Because remember, you don't always need to use the thick client. If you're doing any platform level config, of course, that is definitely a reason to use it. Or let's say you're working across multiple stations, that's definitely beneficial. But remember, you can have your browser open just alongside that. And the whole idea is that we're going to differentiate the value from a browser to the thick client itself. And so there's always going to be utility that you're going to be able to enjoy by using that browser. All right. So Jason had a question. Can you disable Niagara Mode? So Niagara Mode is a subscription service that you have to sign up for. And of course, you have to pay for it as well. And so it's not going to be active. Jason, this is, again, something you have to purchase that'd be on top of your license. So we do have the 90-day trial that's available for you today. So take advantage of that. All right, let's see here. All right, Mike Hobbs wants to know, Edge 10, are you going to be able to run Niagara 5 on that? We are currently investigating the Edge 10 platform as we speak. So we'll be able to provide some indication to our customers as to whether that will run therein. All right. Let's see. We've got time for one more. So, will there be loss of functionality to from N4 JSON to an N5 supervisor? No, we're going to make sure. Look, there's going to be one thing that we're going to continue going forward. It's going to be the capability. Number one, to make sure that you have the supervisor within your network at being at the latest rev. But with Niagara 5, we are intending to enable Niagara 5 supervisors, for example, to be able to speak with N4 JSON, even if it's a JSON 8000, for example. All right. So the last but not least, more kind of specific on Workbench. So asking more about you've got the AX views or the AX property sheet. Those things are available today within Workbench. Now you also realize, that we've got the property sheet or the HTML5 version therein as well. We're going to be making some changes insofar as that is concerned. Now that's going to be probably more of a, again, Niagara 5 thing. But we understand that. Remember, with HTML5 views, we're actually using a version of Chrome to be able to render those visualizations, whereas the kind of AX style views do not leverage that technology. And because of that, of course, there's going to be a discernible difference when you're using Workbench. And so that's why, use the web views. Of course, those are going to be quite snappy in particular. And then, of course, you're going to have some natural workflow enhancements that you will be able to take advantage of just by using that. All right, folks. Well, we are officially at time. I would like to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy day to join us to hear about some exciting things that are coming with Niagara 4.14. Again, if you'd like to give it a test drive, reach out to Tridium Beta Test at Tridium.com. We appreciate your loyalty. We appreciate your business. And wherever you find yourself in the world today, we hope you have a great day. Thanks for joining us.